The billionaire stated repeatedly that the Adani Group's goals and those of India were aligned. The company's financial downfall, which is already well underway, will harm the nation. The arrival, as he described it, was not his own. It was inextricably linked to India's own overhaul. The goals of his businesses aligned with the needs of the country. Believing in his long-term collaboration with India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, he has entrusted his private businesses, havens, Withdrawal, and more to a single politician. Now, on a spectacular scale, his Adani Group's fortunes are growing even faster than they were before. A disruption caused by economic and political factors that will cause pain throughout the country. In less than a week, more than $110 million in market value, or more than half the value of the Adani Group, has vanished like an inflated balloon. A study by Hindenburg Research, a tiny additional York research company, left investors reeling with its depiction of brazen accounting fraud and market manipulation, just as the Adani Group began selling new shares to investors. India's largest ever secondary share sale. Adani reacted with nationalism, calling the study a premeditated attack on India and an attack on the independence, integrity, and greatness of Indian institutions. Adani, according to Hindenburg, waved the flag to conceal unethical techniques, such as utilizing offshore shell companies to inflate the pricing of the shares in order to conceal his unsustainable debt-fueled ascent. The shambles may erode investor trust in the remainder of the Indian stock market. Adani's shares formerly accounted for more than 6% of India's two main stock exchanges. Today, they account for less than 3%. Worryingly, Adani's demise might endanger India's image as the world's next great hope for driving global economic development. The government is being questioned on if financial authorities were doing their duties correctly, while the Adani Group issued strange signals for Hindenburg to pick apart. In the 3 decades after he was bolstered by stock market crashing stock frauds, the country's senior regulator has created an enviable reputation. In terms of politics, the question of Adani's participation in the national development model is one that the Prime Minister has staked his reputation as a builder of the things that India requires. India has no tekort on bedriven met de ervaring, died they hear Modi's ambities Verizon. However, if the Adani Group is found to be insolvent, India may find itself without industrial opportunities. Fraud and failure are not the images Mr. Modi or India want to convey, especially this year, when the nation has just been named the world's 5th largest economy and is expressing itself more forcefully on the global arena. The foreign policy elite in the United States is eager to deepen ties with India, with Russia's conflict in Ukraine, as well as the increasingly tense relationship between the U.S. and China. India appears to be an urgently needed partner, and India is capitalizing on its turn to host the Group of 20 later this year, dubbing itself the Mother of Democracy for the event. Mr. Modi's political opponents believe they may catch him in a vulnerable moment, despite the fact that they appear to have little chance of unseating him in next year's elections. In fact, India's major firms were considerably harsher. At a gathering of India's largest trade organization in 2003, the heads of 2 of the country's oldest business groups, Bajaj and Godrej, questioned Mr. Modi about the law and order situation in his state. The Gujarati business community then stepped in to help Mr. Modi. Mr. Adani helped establish a local trade association and, in collaboration with Mr. Modi's state administration, helped establish an annual investment conference, dubbed Vibrant Gujarat. Mr. Modi's steady hand advanced the state's economic growth greatly. A Gujarat model swiftly arose, in which market-based or at least private sector development replaced previous government's creaking, state-driven paradigm. It gave many economists and ordinary residents hope that India's growth in the global market would be hastened. This inflated Gujarat was too significant for both the BJP and the trade association to ignore. Politicians and business people alike made pilgrimages to meet Mr. Modi and seek forgiveness for their criticism of him. Mr. Modi's image was gradually restored. He might become an emblem of contemporary, technology-driven economic prosperity if he runs for national government in 2014. He traveled to Delhi, the seat of national power, aboard Mr. Adani's private plane after winning. Following Mr. Modi's election, shares in Adani surged. The subsidiary, Adani Enterprises, was suddenly worth 23% more as investors appeared to calculate that proximity to the new administration would be rewarded in the long run. In an October interview with the New York Times, Adani ascribed its meteoric rise to business governance, financial discipline, decision-making procedures with more predictability, and the trust of our lenders and rating agencies, and of course, the underlying growth of the country. In the budget presented by India's Finance Minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, amid Adani's loss of market capitalization, she stated that the government will rely on a virtuous cycle that begins with private investment and is supported by public funds. As a national strategy, the Adani-Modi approach. The Adani Group spans several sectors of the economy, but unlike India's traditional conglomerates, it has a major focus on infrastructure. Since colonial times, much of the physical infrastructure of a modern economy has been absent in India. Mr. Modi has prioritized catching up, building roads and bridges, linking rural settlements to the power system, and even toilets. These are all apparent targets that Mr. Modi has set and achieved more swiftly. Along with direct advantages, they are among the most successful strategies to earn the support of Indian people, outperforming ethnic or religious rivals, as Mr. Modi's party has done. Making India a green power center has been a priority for the Modi administration. Despite being a major coal investor, Adani Group and Total Energies announced a $50 billion commitment in 2021 to establish the world's largest green hydrogen ecosystem. Sometimes, the collaboration was more about control than it was about building. After the government amended restrictions that prohibited ownership to corporations with aviation experience, Mr. Adani became the operator of 6 successful airports in 2018. Mr. Adani has disputed that the government favored him in any way. Requests for comment were not returned by the Adani Group. As India watched this week as the business leader most closely connected with Mr. Modi teetered on the verge of collapse, many of his elite appeared ready to suspend believing. By the end of the fresh share issue's 3-day window on Tuesday, institutional investors, such as the State Bank of India and the Life Insurance Corporation of India, had lined up behind a fund managed by Abu Dhabi's royal family. They helped preserve the fatal transaction, along with a slew of unnamed Indian business families, by promising to pay out-of-date prices for shares that could be purchased on the open market for less money. At the same time, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman gravely read the annual budget to Parliament without addressing the turmoil in the Indian stock markets. In the end, her quiet, like Mr. Modi's, appeared unearthly. Credit Suisse and Citigroup, 2 prominent investment banks, said that they would no longer accept the Adani Group stocks as collateral for margin loans. Adani eventually pulled the plug on its own share offers, with Mr. Adani stating that it would be morally wrong to fulfill the orders given the declining share prices. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to hit the subscribe and like buttons and the bell icon for regular updates. Until the next one.